Hey everyone, this video is going to basically be me rambling for 50 minutes straight about every game in UFO 50 one by one, 1 minute at a time. If you want my more concise thoughts of the overall product, go ahead and watch my video that I uploaded yesterday, which is my edited, scripted review of UFO 50. But without further ado, let's get started. Barbuta is the first game in UFO 50. And going into this, I was like, uh-oh, this one is real hard. The first time I died and I looked over and I saw that I had none of my upgrades, I was very afraid. The controls are appropriately very slow and sluggish and awful, and the environments are impossible to navigate. I've really struggled with this one. I've only played it for like 45 minutes and I haven't made any progress. I'm still on screen one. I think I'm going to stream this on Twitch, my first completion of it. But this game is definitely interesting. I'm very excited to see what kind of secrets it has, and it's a good start to the collection and a very good representation of early video game design. Second game is Bug Hunter, and this one really surprised me. I can't believe how addicting this one is. First of all, it is a grid-based strategy game where you just have a little grid and you've got to kill bugs that evolve every turn, and as they evolve they gain new abilities, and it's totally random. You encounter new bugs every time, and there's like 13 abilities that you can use to manipulate the arena and move your character and kill the bugs, but you only have access to a limited amount of them at a time. Swapping them out by collecting currency on the map, and this one creates a really tense balance where you think you're doing really well and then suddenly you have 20 bugs on the right side of the screen, and then you get a game over and you thought that you like had it in the bag. And that's really what you want from a tactical strategy game like this, sort of like Into the Breach, where everything is very clear, but because it's very clear, it asks more from you, and I love Bug Hunter. Alright, these thoughts are way harder to get out in a minute than I thought they were going to be. Ninpek is game number 3, and this one, again, just like Barbuta, I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, 5 minutes in, I've barely made any progress, and I keep dying on like the second screen. It's an auto-scroller platformer, but the auto-scroller also pushes your character forward at the same time, so you're constantly fighting the camera and running into obstacles like spikes and enemies. The gift, which is an unlockable in UFO 50, requires you to collect 3 sandwiches, and it took me like an hour just to get the 3 sandwiches, and you can get them all in the first 3 minutes of the game. I'm bad at this one, but I like it a lot. I got to the boss, which I think is the final boss. It might just be the first boss of the game, and it's hard, which isn't a bad thing, I guess. Paint Chase is the Splatoon top-down racing game of the collection, naturally, and you have to drive your like car Pac-Man style around the levels, and you've got little power-ups and you can run over enemies. I've made it about halfway through the total progression of the game. If you lose 3 lives, you have to go all the way back to the beginning of the game. I think what I like most about this game is whenever you complete a level and you don't know if you got it or not, and it does the Splatoon thing where it makes you wait to see if you hit the percentage versus the other color, and I think that is very, very effective in keeping things intense. And it just controls like a dream, feels really good running over other cars, and it's really difficult. But once you learn how to do the levels, it's not a roguelike, it's not procedurally generated. You just blast right through it, and it's really fun learning as you go. Magic Garden is a classic arcade-style Pac-Man-esque game where you are a girl fighting your witch sister, friend, person who's trying to curse you with blobs, and you are tasked with collecting these pink blobs and then dropping them on stars, snake-like, and you can't run into your own blobs that are trailing you. Whenever you drop off enough blobs, you get a potion. Stronger the potion, longer you can eat the other blobs. Chain the blobs for a higher score. It's very, very traditional and extremely effective at what it does. You have to collect 200 of the blobs in order to get the gold disc on this, so I don't know, I guess I'm screwed. Game 6 is Mortal, and I really enjoyed this one. I've made it almost to the end of it, and basically what it is you have a set number of lives at the start of the game, and almost every action you have to take to get through the level costs you a character life. You have 3 different ways to kill yourself: stone, blowing yourself up, or sticking yourself into a wall. You can use those to progress through the levels in different ways, and then also it introduces new level mechanics as you go through the game. And one of the smartest things it does is it allows you to go back to earlier levels, get a new life high score, and then carry forward your life total into the game, making it easier to get through those later levels that are a lot more tricky to get through. So this one's really has a really unique hook and executes on it really well. Valbrace is the Ojiro Fumoto directed game, and similar to their other game Downwell, you are a little character moving through a level very quickly with really snappy controls, and there's a shop with upgrades. As soon as you die, you respawn right back at the start of the game with the music. Every time you respawn, every single time, and then the music ramps up. The song for this absolutely slaps. I love it so much. And I've actually found myself coming back to this one in short bursts whenever I only have a few minutes to play. But again, also extremely hard. I have not finished it. Planet Zoldath is one of the ones that I finished on my first time opening. It's the first game I finished in the whole collection. And I still don't know how to feel about it. I haven't went back to it. I'm pretty sure it's randomly generated, so maybe it has some hook to it or secret that I don't know about. Whenever you beat it, it does tell you that to get the cherry, you have to beat it in less than 20 minutes. Maybe something happens if you beat it in less than 20 minutes. But basically, you're walking around top-down Zelda style around a planet, picking up items, and each item interacts with the world in a different way. One of them is like a translator, one of them is a weapon, a boomerang, and you just have to collect your ship parts and then get in the ship and leave. I see what they're going for with like an early adventure exploration game, but generally I didn't really have that much fun with this one. This is the first game in the collection that I wrote I didn't really have fun with this one, so if that says anything, that's about my thoughts on it. Attactics, on the other hand, I had a blast with. It's a real-time strategy game where you are controlling a bunch of units on the left side that all have different properties. And I say it's a real-time strategy game, but it's actually a turn-based strategy game that moves in real time, and you can't stop it from moving. So what you have to do is you have to try to take your turns very quickly, and you're trying to organize your left side of units very fast as it's pushing forward, and you're always like, I could have moved that one here, I could have moved that one here. And I find it to be hectic and fun, and it's got a multiplayer mode, and the single player campaign introduces the units at a gradual pace that keeps things fresh. Sometimes it makes the enemy have more health than you or more units than you, and it keeps you on your toes. This one's a blast. I went in not knowing how I'd feel about the strategy board game stuff, since I generally don't play much of that on my own, but I'm living. Next is Devilition, which Derek actually came up with way back in the day. This is an old indie game that he made in the 90s, I think. And it's a strategy puzzle game where you are trying to place you have a limited number of units that have certain directional attacks on them. And you can only activate one of them. So you have to make sure you chain all of the directional attacks across the board, destroying all the demons, saving all the villagers. And as you go forward, if you have more demons than villagers, you lose. And I've personally only made it to round 5, so I can't really speak too much on it. I basically played it for 20 minutes. It's fun. I'm sure we're going to see some crazy high scores, speed runs, whatever. I think it only goes to wave 10 regardless. I think it ends there. So maybe it's more of a limited time management kind of game. Kick Club. I've made it to the final world of this, I think. It's a platformer arcade game where you are going through levels and killing sports objects with a soccer ball, and then hopping over to the next level, collecting food along the way for points. I could see the speedrun for this being really good because the lineups for the kicks and the movement seems to have a lot of depth with the ability to headbutt the ball and kick it with different power levels and whatnot. I love the music in this one and the sprites, the characters. The 2-player mode is really good. This is definitely one of the early standouts that made me say, oh boy, this speedrun, I'm going to be playing this game a whole lot. Avianos is a 4X civilization-esque strategy game where you're controlling a primitive tribe worshipping dinosaurs, which is pretty sick. This one overwhelmed me a lot with information at first. Well, kind of lack of information. It doesn't really tell you much, but it was pretty intuitive. I still don't have a total grasp on every nuance to the mechanics, which is a good thing. But I did get to the final level of the story mode of this. There's only 3, but the multiplayer is going to go hard on this one. I think there will be a lot of different strategies. We'll see how many of them are viable. Just as a quick pick up and play against a friend who likes strategy games like this, it'll be extremely fun. I liked it a lot. Mooncat is a platformer developed by Eric Circa for a game jam a while ago, and this one uses the face buttons to move right, the D-pad to move left, both buttons to jump and slam. And honestly, my initial thought booting up this game was, I think Eric favors music to his own projects. I said, why is Mooncat's music so freaking good? It's the best soundtrack in the whole dang game. And maybe I'm partial to moody synth sounds or something like that, but I like the soundtrack a lot. The game itself is a fairly straightforward platformer with the gimmick of the controls. But I think there's a lot of secrets in this one, just based on the hints that the main menu gives whenever you beat it. I'm excited to play more of it. I had fun, and I think the speedrun for this will be really good. Bushido Ball is the first sports game in the collection, and it's kind of like a tennis game, but you are playing as ninjas and samurai. I played straight through this one the first time I opened it. You basically just have to play through a fighting arcade game style exhibition through all the characters in the game that all have unique abilities. I also played some multiplayer of this with my partner, and I think there's a lot of potential here. The difficulty of the single player campaign of it is pretty high. The final boss, I don't know if it's random, but the final boss that I had was kind of a pain in the butt. I ended up having to use like 9 continues, I think, and to get the cherry completion of it, you need to get 0, so I'm really looking forward to that. But overall, I'm pretty high on this. I like Windjammers, which this is pretty similar to a classic fighting kind of tennis game, and all the abilities seem pretty balanced. We'll see. Block Koala is a numbers puzzle game where you push numbered blocks, and you can only push the blocks in a row if the numbers are higher than the other numbers. So this is the first example of a game that I moved on from because I knew that it was going to completely devour all my time, and I knew that I wanted to play all 50 games in these 2 weeks leading up to release. So I actually have only played this game for like 17 minutes. And I just did the first couple puzzles, got stuck on one, and then moved on. So I actually can't speak to this game really at all. So I'm just gonna say, it seems really good. It seems very long. I think there's 50 levels based on the completion menu. But basically, going into this one, just know it's probably a long one. And that's all I can really say right now. Game 16 is Camouflage, a puzzle game where you play as a lizard and you go around each level dodging bigger creatures that can kill you, camouflaging yourself, picking up little baby lizards, picking up food, and then trying to make your way to the end of the level. It's a very straightforward puzzle game with a good hook. I've only played the first 6 levels of it, which amounts to 30% completion. And I think similarly to Block Koala, I can't speak totally to it, but of the puzzles I did do, I enjoyed them. I like the way they give you a button to just show exactly where you can't move, so that way you're not counting all the squares to try to find out where the enemy can see you. But visually, this one didn't stand out to me, especially coming off of Block Koala, but I'm looking forward to getting back to it. And you know I'm 100%ing every one of these games. Alright, Campanella. This game is an absolute standout. I think the controls for this are amazing. I love that there are 3 games in the collection that use the same controls for the ship, but the way these levels are built, single screen, every level has a coffee cup that you can find by going to a specific point in the level, so it's extremely replayable trying to find all the coffee cups. The boss fights are all fun, I won't spoil any of them, and generally just the progression and the way you get extra lives and the way it's constantly feeding you more lives because you can die in a split second, weaving in between all the little gaps the levels have. Speedrunning this is going to be an absolute blast. I love Campanella. This is probably my favorite game in the collection up to this point. This game is great. Golfaria is an adventure golf game where you are exploring a world as a living golf ball. And this one, speaking of favorites so far, this one is definitely one of my top 5 overall. I played this one straight through. It took me 3.5 hours. I didn't even 100% it. Playing through this game is just an absolute delight. You are, like I said, a living golf ball, and your health is your strokes. Every time you hit the ball across the world, you lose 1 HP. You get to flags around the world to recover your HP, upgrade by finding golf clubs that increase your strokes. There is a whole world underground, an overworld, upgrades, a boss fight. It has everything. I love this. The Metroidvania golf game. Highly recommend booting this one up immediately. 11 out of 10. Next up is Big Bell Race, which uses the ship controls from Campanella to create a little single screen racing game. I finished this one in 12 minutes, so I can't exactly say it's a standout in the collection simply because there's not a huge reason to go back to it, though I don't have the cherry yet, so I guess there literally is. I played this multiplayer as well. The multiplayer is definitely worth playing through a couple times. I think it's really funny to smack your friend and push them into a wall and then watch them go to the very start of the race. I think it's a fun time. I think it's funny, but closer to the bottom of my overall ranking currently, simply because there is not a whole lot to it. But it serves its purpose in the canon of UFO Soft, obviously making a racing game as you would in the 80s. Warptank is another one of the massive games. I'm only 40% through it after over an hour played. You play as a little tank who can warp to the ceiling or the floor opposite where you are, as well as shoot directly above you. Levels are laid out in a way that makes you have to really think about where you're going to teleport, and each area introduces a new mechanic similar to something like Meat Boy or a lot of other great platformers. The one negative I have with this game is whenever the character moves, it moves on a grid. So whenever the screen scrolls, the screen kind of hitches and moves on a grid. It doesn't move smoothly. So while I think they're doing it for artistic reasons, my eyes have trouble focusing on the screen as the ship scrolls. But I'm curious what other people think about this one after release. I wonder if that's just a me thing. I like the game a lot, though I do wish the scrolling was smoother. Oh baby, Waldorf's Journey, the funniest game in the collection, definitely. You play as a little walrus who can hold A to jump, and then you can fly if you have enough meter. You refill your meter by getting fish. You can pick up shells to get money to go to a shop and buy upgrades. That's the single player mode. It's really good. Very short, but has a lot of depth. I still haven't gotten the perfect ending on it. But I think where this game shines is the multiplayer. It's just a simple last walrus standing mode where you're all on platforms that despawn after a time, and you're just racing for the fish. But the way the physics work with the controls, you end up zipping across the screen and looping around, and you just like keep shooting by until you finally fall down. I think it is so funny, and I'm always gonna go back to this game. Every time I boot up UFO 50 multiplayer, this is the first game you go to. This is the last game you go to. This is the game. And yes, I dedicated a minute and a half to Waldorf's Journey. Xanagear stamp of approval, certified banger. Speaking of bangers, game 22 is Porgy, the game with my favorite character, my favorite art direction in the entire collection. The game has you control a cute little submarine, attempting to solve a mystery about why the animals in the ocean are angry, and you have to go to the surface every time you run out of fuel. Your HP is also your fuel, so if you get hit, it just cuts off how much time you can spend underwater. So the gameplay loop is very similar to SteamWorld Dig. Going down, getting upgrades, going to the surface, installing them. You can only have a limited number of upgrades installed, so there's some opportunity for depth, pun intended. Really going to be interested in seeing how the speedrun develops for this one. It was the first game that I got the cherry disc for, which I assume is from the hard ending, but it actually doesn't tell you how to get the cherry once you get it, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was time completed? No idea. But generally my thoughts are this game is freaking great. Definitely play it. Alright, Onion Delivery. Onion Delivery is one that I was excited for because of the art direction, what we knew about it going into it. I knew it was a top-down driving game similar to Crazy Taxi, which it is. You're tasked with surviving 7 days on the job of delivering onions, and I really don't know where to start with this one. I don't like it. I do not like onion delivery, and I'm worried going back through and editing this after I'm done recording, I'm just going to realize that I said I don't like all the games I'm really bad at, and onion delivery is one I'm really, really bad at. So maybe when I'm good at it, I'll enjoy it. But this game controls like hell, similar to top-down racers of the time, and I suck at it. I only survived 1 day, and I don't know how I'm gonna do more. Caramel is one that I do like, but also suck at. I have not beaten the first level of this game, and I've played it for an hour. So that's embarrassing to say. I know you're all gonna play it and you're probably gonna beat level 1 in like 10 minutes. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's more to the camera than I am realizing. But basically it's a shoot 'em up, side scroller. You have a camera that is offset a couple feet in front of you. You take pictures of the enemies, it doubles your points. Get extra lives. Your character moves pretty slowly, so I find dodging the bullet hell bullets that are everywhere very difficult. But I think it's good. When I finally get how to play it, I think it will be very good. Great art direction, cute characters. Definitely let me know in the comments if you beat level 1 faster than I did. Alright, enough about games I'm terrible at, and let's talk about one that I am just bad at. Party House is a deck builder where you are getting a deck of people showing up to your party, and they'll show up in a random order. They all have different effects on the party, and your goal is to get enough money or popularity or whatever to hit the objective that the level is laying out for you. There is an endless random mode. There is 5 set objectives, and this one has a potential to be huge, especially coming after Balatro, an endless deck builder, essentially roguelike in this collection, fits right in, and I'm really excited to get back to this one. I still haven't beaten the first objective. I've only played it for like 20 minutes. I got a handle on it and said, okay, this game's sick, I'll go back to it. So I'll be streaming this one a lot. 26 is Hot Foot, finally a game I can talk confidently about. No, I'm just kidding. I can't beat this one either. I keep failing. This one's kind of brutal compared to Bushido Ball as a similarly straightforward sports game. But if you fail one match, you go all the way back to the beginning of the game, and I think you have to beat like 6 in a row or something to clear the game. But basically what makes this different is you can press a button to pass the beanbag to your co-op buddy, and if you're playing single player, you control both of them, and you can swap between the two of them. You collect stars to get upgrades, to use special abilities, and then you also draft a team at the start of players with different traits. So there's a lot to this one, but at its core, it's a pretty straightforward sports game where you're throwing beanbags at the faces of your opponent. And while I am partial to Bushido Ball over this one, it's a pretty fun time, especially the co-op mode. Next up is Divers, an RPG that kind of took me by surprise because I didn't know what to expect going in. Similar to Porgy, it has you always going back all the way to the surface every time you pick up an upgrade or anything, and you also have to go back to the beginning to rest because it is an RPG. Similar to Dragon Quest, you fight in a first-person view with these 3 lizards, and as of right now, I'm only like an hour into this one, and I bounced off of it immediately because I had just played 4 hours of Porgy, and this one was so similar structurally that I was like, okay, I'll come back to it. But I have come back to it, and I really, really like it. I mentioned the cutscene that plays whenever you rest in the main review, and oh boy, that cutscene is everything. These lizards are so cute. I love them so much. But mechanically, I'm having a really good time with it. It seems like there could be a lot of secrets to it. I found a few things that has me scratching my head. But I'm really curious to see how long this one is, considering Porgy was 4 hours and this one is an RPG, which are usually stretched out quite a bit longer. I'm looking forward to it. Rail Heist is a game that I honestly don't know how to describe. It's a, action puzzle strategy game where you're navigating a small level of cops and robbers on a train, and you basically just need to trial and error your way through the level, figuring out the best way to proceed with a bunch of objects and items, upgrades introduced as you go through the levels in the game. There's breakable floors, chickens, turrets. You can use a gun with limited ammo. There's a lot of different ways to approach the heist in every level, and there is different objectives for not killing anyone, killing everyone, and beating it in the time limit. So a lot of speedrun opportunities for this one, and while I haven't finished this one yet, I've played a fair chunk of it and I really enjoyed what I played. Next up is Vainger, a whole-ass Metroidvania with a VVV style gravity flip mechanic. And this one I'm like delaying finishing. I think I'm halfway through it, but I don't want it to end. I love this game so much. There's a map, there's upgrades, there is tough platforming segments, boss fights. It has everything. It's a Metroid style game. This is one of the games in the collection where I just can't believe this is one of 50 because it feels so fleshed out. I love going through rooms where there's spikes on the ceiling and the floor and wobbling back and forth as you go through, similar to VVV. But the way the levels are laid out and the way you progress through it is extremely effective, very fun. And this is another one that you should definitely prioritize if you are a fan of Metroidvanias. And I'd even go as far as to say buy the game for this if you like Metroidvanias. Alright, Rock on Island, I'm gonna embarrass myself with this one because I know that Balloons is one of the biggest games on the planet with the kids. But this is a tower defense game. It's a very straightforward tower defense game. You can put down your cavemen, you can upgrade the cavemen, you can put down campfires to buff the cavemen, you can change the cavemen into different types of units depending on which units you upgraded them to, and then you can also upgrade your character and throw weapons from your character. I am awful at this game. I have 3 hours played, can't beat level 4. I am so bad at it. I can't wait till other people get their hands on this just so I can cheat and look to see what other people did. But if you're familiar with the genre, you'll be much better than me, I'm sure. Next game is Pingolf, one that I was really looking forward to. It's an 18-hole side-scrolling golf game where you can also press a button to dunk the ball. And I don't necessarily think this game is super hard because obviously once you know the courses, they're always in the same order. And it's just 18 courses. But I've played it through 3 times now, and I still have not gotten the gold disc on it, which is completing it. And I don't know what that says about me, but this game seems pretty tough. But maybe it's just a me thing. I do think visually it's awesome, and speedruns will probably be pretty fun with it. Maybe there is some secrets in here, and in multiplayer it's pretty fun. But I will say it kind of disappointed me a little bit. I thought there would be more to it than just 18 straight holes, play through it once. Thought maybe there was some more discovery in here, but even with that, it's still a good game. That's just me pining for something that I imagined in my head and not actually a criticism of the game itself. Next game is Mortol 2, the first sequel in the collection, and one that I absolutely adore. Instead of a level-based structure where you're constantly trying to improve the amount of lives you have, you start with a flat 99 lives, and you're going around the world, exploring, losing those lives, sacrificing different class-based characters to uncover more of the map. So once you learn it, you're going to know exactly how to get through, but getting through it all is a challenge in and of itself. So I think this game is just brilliant in the way that it tasks you with risking jumps to save a life, but potentially losing more in the process. I still haven't finished this one, and just talking about it right now is making me want to go back to this one specifically. I love this one. Another game I'm absolutely terrible at, which I guess should be no surprise at this point, is Fist Hell, a side-scrolling beat-em-up similar to River City Ransom or Streets of Rage. And you have a few different characters to select from with different stats, and then you can get money in the levels, spend the money to buy upgrades. Every character has a special attack that uses some of your health, which I didn't realize, and I was just spending my HP away. But really, getting hit in this game is just so punishing. I have struggled to get out of level 3 in this game. Fortunately, when you use a continue, you continue from the current level you're on, but even that's not enough for me. I need more hand-holding somehow. Next up is Overbold, a Smash TV top-down style survival shooter where you are able to bet more money, which adds more enemies, which makes it harder, but potentially pays you out better, allowing you to buy better upgrades so you can survive longer. I have not finished this one yet, but I did get the gift, which tasks you with winning $500 in a single round, which I found to be very difficult. And I generally liked this game, but the one disappointing thing I found with it was the multiplayer mode, which just has you betting against the other person whether or not they can survive. It's like a chicken mode. And I really would have preferred to actually play the rounds with someone. I didn't find this mode to be very fun at all. It basically just turned into back and forth. Oh, I'm just playing single player, but now you win if I lose. I didn't find it to be that fun. Next one is Campanella 2, another highlight for me. And I think me describing it, it will be obvious why it's a highlight for me. You start a run, and if you die, you go back to the beginning of the game, and it is procedurally generated. There is shops, there is instant death if you run into something by accident, and even after an hour of playing, I've only made it to level 3 of I think 4 or 5. There's probably a secret ending in this one, and yep, this is basically just Spelunky with Campanella controls. You play as the ship, and you also play as Isabel, pilot's sister, on foot segments. If you choose to leave your ship whenever you're out in the level where the ship is, and then you fall off any cliff or anything or touch anything, you die instantly and go straight back to the beginning of the game, which I think is just so funny and very good. What an unforgiving, fun little roguelike. Next is Hyper Contender, the competitive fighter of the collection, similar to Towerfall or Samurai Gun. Basically, you have bunch of characters with different mobility and attacks. Completely varied mobility. One of them can't even jump. They have to use a mine to launch themselves. And then each time you get hit, you drop a ring. Whoever gets 5 rings first wins. And I had a great time with this in multiplayer with my partner. We just kept going back and forth, back and forth. There's a character named Donkus, which is the funniest name, and he looks very funny and is also coincidentally the best character in the game, in my opinion. Hyper Contender is a 10 out of 10. Game 37 is valbrace, and honestly, this video is not gonna be enough to explain how much I love valbrace. This game was probably my most anticipated one going in, just based on its visuals, but a dungeon crawler with unforgiving exploration where the map is opened by casting a button input spell is just awesome to me. The combat is like Punch Out, the map is highly convoluted, and you can straight up miss the ability to increase your stats. And I'm only on floor 3 or 4 right now, but I can't wait to play more of this. This is one I've been saving for a stream just because of how much I love it. Probably not going to be for everyone, but I like valbrace a whole lot. Game 38 is Rakshasa, a pretty straightforward Ghosts and Goblins style platformer with a high score and a time limit where you can extend it by getting through the world and picking up clocks. If you die, you have to do a little bullet hell sequence where you can't attack, but you just have to collect a bunch of little pickups, and then you respawn. Each time you die, it gets a little harder. And I haven't made it very far into this one, but I could see it definitely being a fan favorite among people, just because it's a very well-made, straightforward, traditional platformer with a bunch of enemies and boss fights. And I bet the speedrun is going to go pretty hard for this one. I'm really excited to see how the retro speedrunning community latches onto this game, because I think games like this will make it really stand out to them. Alright, up to this point I've said that games were too hard for me or whatever, but I was probably exaggerating about most of them. I'm probably going to have an easy time whenever those games click with me. And I say all this just to emphasize my next point correctly. Star Waspir is too freaking hard. Everything happens at 5,000 miles per hour. There's bullets everywhere coming at you from every direction, and I can't keep up with it. And then the gift challenge is to get a 20 times multiplier, which I could barely handle, which is just the gift. And you have to spell egg and GGG and GEG while you're dodging all these bullets. I can't with this game. This game's too freaking hard. I can't. If you're good at this game, let me know in the comments, because I want to see it. And the next one is Grimstone, the big RPG in the collection. And if there's one game that I really can't talk about, it's probably this one. I've only played it for 40 minutes, which I don't know. Is that like 1% of the game? Probably. This game could be 20 hours long. I wanted to find out before the game came out, and I was going to commit to finishing Grimstone specifically, but I ended up focusing on getting all the gifts instead, which I still haven't even done. But it's a JRPG with turn-based combat with Paper Mario style timed button presses. And the combat so far has been very straightforward. I like the story, and I like the way you choose the characters at the start. I won't actually spoil it because I think it's worth seeing for yourself. Grimstone has been fun so far, but again, I can't really give my full impression on it yet. Game 41 is Lords of Diskonia, a strategy shuffleboard game where every level has its own world map that you have to traverse alongside the opponent player. This one's multiplayer as well, and you move around the map collecting upgrades, trying to counter the enemy, and then you have a bunch of different puck, and they all have their own traits and abilities. And I think the depth for this one surprised me. You can really set up some crazy moves, comboing slides and bouncing enemies into enemies into enemies. and really doing some damage if you set up everything properly. And I haven't said a lot about the music so far in the collection, which is honestly a disservice because a lot of these games have some incredible music. Let me just take a second to say I love the Vainger music, love the Waldorfs Journey music, love the Porgy music, warptank music. It's all the Eric Circa, the composer, and he just killed it creating a huge variety of songs across the whole thing with different styles. And this one's no different. Lords of Diskonia has some awesome music. And I'm really excited to play this one multiplayer. I haven't had a chance to yet. Game 42 is Night Manor, a traditional point-and-click adventure game with some absolutely incredible art. I honestly was not anticipating this one in any respect. I didn't know what to expect from it, but going through it, I honestly just had such a great time. I loved solving every puzzle. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the music. Exploring this manor and learning your way around it is awesome. The story is fun, campy horror, but honestly a little more unsettling than you'd expect from this collection. It's pretty spooky, but the whole structure and the way the puzzles are laid out throughout the game are all very satisfying and really, really just well made. You can tell there was a lot of iteration on the design in this one, and you should definitely play this one through. Game 43 is Elfazars Hat, another one with absolutely incredible art direction. It's a top-down action shooter and with a dodge button, so you have iframes when you dodge, and there's 4 stages, and I was actually able to complete this one, which obviously you can tell with my attitude and my general vibe going into this review. You can tell I like it because I was able to beat it, and it's not too hard. But in general, I think the upgrade system is neat in this one. You basically pick up 3 of the same card to get a life up, bombs, option, or gun upgrade. And I think that's effective for the design they're going for. But really the standout for this game is the art style, the music, and the general vibe it gives off. Also, the co-op multiplayer in this is really fun. I enjoyed it. Next up is Pilot Quest, probably the single most unique game in the entire collection. It is an idle game crossed with a Zelda game, basically, with the Zelda exploration being limited by the amount of resources you have in the idle game, which is also capped. And you definitely find yourself having to leave this game often, because whenever you go into it, you collect the resources that you have waited for in the idle game, go out into the world, find a couple things, probably die, and then you are left having to wait again to explore. So I actually found this one to be really interesting. I had a few situations where I only had a couple seconds of life left, making it out by the skin of my teeth. But I think I'm going to have a lot more to say about this in the future. I have finished it, but I kind of want to talk about this one at length with some spoilers. So I can't really get into my specific criticisms of the game in this mini review. But definitely boot this one up early to get the idle clock a-tickin'. Game 45 is Mini and Max, another unique one in the collection that I am specifically holding off on playing because I know that it's going to be one of my favorites and I don't want it to end yet. But you are a girl and her dog trapped in a small room, and you can shrink at any point in the room and then explore that as a small version of the character. So it's really cool. It's basically a big open world, but it's all in the confines of a room, and your fast travel is just turning big, walking to the other side of the room, and then shrinking back down again. There's a bunch of little areas to explore, wall outlets, bookshelf, shelf, and I think the imagination that went into this one is just awesome. I've only played like 40 minutes of it, but it doesn't seem like I've even scratched the surface of it. I think this one's a long one. Next is Combatants or Combat Ants, and I spoke about this a little bit in my main review, talking about how I didn't really understand the game, and honestly, I haven't even went back to it since I wrote that review. So I have not much more to say other than, yeah, I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong in the game. There's a button that says instinct, and I think that means like, okay, send these units to do what they're supposed to do, but then the units just kind of like walk into a wall. And it's supposed to be a strategy game, and my units are kind of just not doing what I tell them to do. So definitely something I'm missing, and I'd like to see other people play the game. But I'll be going back to it soon, and maybe I'll figure it out. Relatively have not played that much of the game. Game 47 is Quibble Race, and this one is another really unique entry. It's an early concept made by Derek and John from a while ago in the early days of Flash games and stuff. And you are a bettor betting on a race, and you can you can murder these innocent creatures. You can drug them to make them stronger. You can bash the other ones in the kneecaps. And it's all kind of messed up, but it's got this layer of comedy that I think works really well. And it's really fun in multiplayer, where you have to look away from the screen, and then you just like club the kneecaps of your friends quibble, but you don't know if it's actually their quibble or not. But then you find out it is, and you're like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I murdered your quibble. And then they lose all their money, and it's a great time. You play through X amount of rounds. Whoever has the most money at the end wins, but obviously there's a lot of randomness in it. It's all random, and it's just hilarious. Also, I love that art. The art in here with Pilot makes him look like a real piece of work. Just absolutely the worst person on the planet, and killing these innocent creatures. Look at his scary face. Coming up to the end of the collection, we got the final sequel. It's Campanella 3, and it is a much different game than the first two games in the series. Does not use the same controls, but does adopt a kind of Star Fox-like behind-the-back camera, but locking you into this small grid. And then as the enemies hit the grid, they lock themselves in place, and you can change from shooting forward to hitting a different button to shooting opposite the direction you last moved, which I find to be extremely intuitive and really quite fun to get down. So you basically just aim, you move away from the blocks, start shooting at them, and if you clear all the enemies in a wave, you get a star, and then you go into a bonus level. So there's not an actual score counter in this one, but the potential for unlocking a secret ending or something is really awesome. I still haven't finished this one, but I've had a lot of fun with it. And Seaside Drive is another shmup, and you are a car shooting above you or in front of you or behind you with two different buttons. X shoots in the direction you're aiming, and then A shoots in front or behind. But the power of your shots is determined by how much you have power slid. So you're basically always moving left to the left side of the screen in order to build up your meter, and then moving back to the right to start shooting again. And the way they introduce new enemies in each level that have different approaches is really interesting and quite fun. And I did make it to the very final level of this game, so it's not too long. It's not too hard, but it is really fun and very good to look at. Art direction is excellent. And as well as the music. The music's an absolute banger. And the final game is Cyber Owls, another game I generally can't speak too much to. I've only played the first few minutes of each level. You can select which level you play first, and if you fail it, your character gets locked up and you have to save them as a different character. And if you fail saving them as another character, they get locked up, so you have to go save them. But each character has a totally different gameplay style. One of them is a Battletoads-esque bike sequence, one of them is a side-scroller, one of them is a behind-the-back Contra-style shooter. And I think this game seems interesting. I don't know how I'd rank it or anything yet, but so far what I've seen, I enjoy it. We'll see what else it has in store, because I've only played a little bit of it. But that is every game in UFO 50. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's 50 minutes reviewing each game for 1 minute. Let me know in the comments what you think of the games once you play them. And also let me know what kind of videos you want to see from me in the future. I'll be posting guides on how to get all the gifts soon. That'll be probably my next video. Or maybe my top 5 games in the collection. I'll probably do that. But I'm sure there will be a bunch of secrets uncovered on release, so I'll be making videos about that. Just let me know in the comments below, and follow me on Twitch. Check me out on Patreon if you want to support me making all these videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.